as dentists or as any sort of professionals, you spent so much time, so much effort, so much energy, and at least in the United States, so much money to do a career that you think is like the be all end all, the pinnacle of what you're supposed to do because that's what society tells you to do. And then you finally realize, oh my God, I've been climbing the wrong mountain this whole time. Jaden, my older son, is 12 years old. I'm sitting next to his bed. He realizes I'm there and he says, Dad. His voice is barely above a whisper. I lean over the bed. I put my ear over his mouth to make sure I can hear him. And he says 3 words I'll never forget. Am I dying? When I broke, only one thought seared into my mind. If life is this fragile and I'm unhappy with the path that I'm on, burn the ships, it's over.
So, Howard, thank you very much for joining me on Success Masters podcast. When we were preparing for this conversation, you shared with me quite a bit around your background and your history, what you've been up to. So let's actually start with that. What did you used to do, and what do you do today?
Yeah, so in my past life, which feels like ages ago, which you probably understand that too, Sanjay, is I was a dentist. I practiced for 16 years. First was with the U.S. Navy, where I was stationed in Chicago in southern Japan, and then ended up having my own practice in Austin, Texas, for nearly 10 years.
Mhm.
But the problem is that I hated it. I
Okay.
was miserable, and I nowadays when I just chat with people, I tell them sometimes life leaves you little clues, and other times life hits you with a 2x4.
Right.
S- So my 2x4 moment was Sunday morning, Memorial Day weekend, 2018. Jaden, my older son, is 12 years old. I'm sitting next to his bed. He realizes I'm there and he says, Dad. His voice is barely above a whisper. Yeah, buddy. I lean over the bed. I put my ear over his mouth to make sure I can hear him. And he says 3 words I'll never forget. Am I dying?
Right.
12 days earlier, Jaden came home with a stomach ache. 3 days after the stomach ache, we're in the ICU at the Children's Hospital having emergency surgery. It was appendicitis that turned septic, 29 days in the hospital, 19 of them in the ICU, 8 straight days of sedation because he went to the operating room 5 times. After they take the tube out of his throat, they give him methadone and morphine to bring him down from the drugs he was on. So my 12-year-old son looks like a heroin addict coming down from a high. And the very first question he will only ask me are those 3 little words. Am I
Mm.
dying?
That must have been quite a shock.
Oh, yeah, that's just not what you expect from your own child,
No.
as especially when they had no idea what was happening the entire time.
Mhm.
And so my first breath was, did I hear him correctly? My second breath was, do not lose it right now. And I look him in the eyes. I tell him, no, you're not dying. You've had prayers from thousands of people all around the world and you're going to be just fine. He looks at me. He knows I'm telling him the truth. He closes his eyes to get more rest. I walk outside the room and then I broke.
Mm.
I was already miserable, as I mentioned. I was burnt out and I was taking it out on everyone around me. But when I broke, only one thought seared into my mind. If life is this fragile and I'm unhappy with the path that I'm on, burn the ships, it's over. And that's what
Right.
I did. I sold my practice and September 2018 just walked away.
Wow. That's pretty traumatic. I mean, the fact that your son said that to you, and then the change you made, which is it's quite interesting because many people, they know they're not happy with something, they're not happy with whatever it is they're doing, but they don't necessarily burn the ships, as you said, and say, right, that's it, I'm walking away. What were the those unhappy moments, if you like, that led up to this, that point where you had that realization that actually, no, this is no longer for me?
It was actually a few months prior. I was out at dinner with my partner, Nicole, and I was down. I just didn't want to practice anymore. And we're out at a restaurant and it's loud. I mean, really loud. Like you can, yeah, if I was sitting right next to you, we could barely hear each other. It was that loud. And I'm sitting there and I'm just grumpy as hell. And I just blurt out, maybe the person that needs to be fired is me.
Okay.
And Sanjay, when I tell you the entire room went silent, all of a sudden there was just this sense of peace in my brain in terms of like, yes, you should. And then the next question in my head was, if my business doubled tomorrow, would that make me happy? And immediately came back as no.
Mhm.
I actually knew that was the moment that I knew something had to change, but it still wasn't a big enough moment yet
Right.
to say I have to move. Like it's done,
Mhm.
and it's horrible in terms of what Jaden went through. And at the same time, it was the greatest blessing that could have happened. One, because he's okay, no long term health issues, everything's fine now. But number two, it was the wake up call in terms of like, you have to be pushed so hard to be able to make what you feel is like such an irrational decision because as dentists or as any sort of professionals, you spent so much time, so much effort, so much energy, and at least in the United States, so much money
Mhm.
to do a career that you think is like the be all end all, the pinnacle of what you're supposed to do because that's what society tells you to do.
Yeah.
And then you finally realize, oh my God, I've been climbing the wrong mountain this whole time. And but I just can't go down. Because
Mhm.
then what am I? Like, what is my identity at this point? And that's probably that was the greatest struggle after I said I'm done, was literally for the next year to say, now what am I? I
Yeah.
mean, yes, I'm a dad, I'm a human being, I'm a man, but like in terms of the value in this world, what am I?
Mm. That's the challenge many people have, right? Is the identity piece. So when you decided that, okay, I'm no longer going to keep my practice, was it that the your identity as a dad took over? That was the thing that made that change more, I don't know, palatable, more kind of obvious to you. Was there a change in identity that occurred?
The answer is no, because I had, it's almost like if someone's in debt, it's the first thing you're trying to do is just get back to zero. I was so miserable for so long. I was just trying to get back to, I'll just call it being human.
Okay, right,
Forget about trying to be a good dad. I was just trying to be human again because all I knew in my mind was, well, this is working. Even if I'm angry, even if I'm exhausted, even if it's I don't want to do this. Like I got to my office and I was exhausted before I even walked in the door that day. I was
right.
just trying to get back to like, can I just be neutral? I don't want to be miserable. I just want to be neutral. I don't even understand what happy means. So, so yeah, I just had to start digging out of the hole. I wasn't ready to be I wasn't ready to be more of a complete human yet.
Okay. So it was basically, as you say, kind of just getting back to zero with, the debt of being miserable. What was it about dentistry that was making you miserable?
Imagine going into work and at least once a week, if not more, you had your customers or your client saying, nothing personable or personal, Sanjay, but I hate being here.
Hmm.
I mean, there's only so often that you can take that where you just come back and say, you know what? I hate being here too.
Right.
And so it's dentistry is a very lonely profession.
Okay,
Yes, I have met some dentists, and it's a small portion. You'd be surprised how many dentists are not happy. They're stuck because of the finances. Um, but the amount of dentists that are truly happy with the profession that they do is actually quite tiny.
right. Okay. Is that, I mean, is that true of all professions, do you think?
I mean, I've only heard 2% of people are truly happy and love what they do. It might be
Right.
closer to 5, but I know it's not an overwhelming majority.
Hmm. Yeah. I actually have a dentist appointment tomorrow, so I will ask the dentist, are you actually happy with what you're doing? The interesting conversation. I was speaking to Howard on Friday, and
Yeah, it's but you know what? It will be a fascinating conversation if he's willing to open up to you to say, like, "No, actually, it's I just feel stuck."
yeah. Which is actually what I think most people in most careers actually do feel, right? They feel stuck. Going back to what you said, they've climbed this mountain. They don't know how to get down from it. Their identity is all linked to that profession often. And so how do you make this massive change? And burning the boats is kind of definitely one of the aspects. But you touched on it earlier that to become a dentist actually requires quite an investment of your money and your time. Were you in a position to say, actually, I've got enough in the bank to be able to stop what I'm doing and start something new? Or was it just purely a leap of faith that you took and said, right, I'm just selling my practice?
Um, I'm it wasn't one of those that, like, no, I could quote unquote officially retire, never have to work again.
Right.
But it was one of those that I did okay, but it was actually the next step that I didn't realize in terms of how much flexibility I had. And so what I mean by that is that as I'm transitioning out of dentistry, I'm having lunch with another dentist who asked me an obvious question. How are you walking away because of all of the debt that's associated with dentistry? I mean, that was the underlying reason for the question. And I made one dumb comment to him. I said, I kind of figured out how to make money move. Now he gave me that, what are you talking about, look? I tried to explain things that day, and frankly, I just didn't do a good job. But a few weeks later, I get the next statement in the mail for my house payment. I take a picture of it as a joke. I send it to him and I said, hey, take a look at this. My house payment was $24.19, which is, I don't know, about 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And all he writes back is, I see it. I don't understand how you can have a $24 house payment. I'm buying a condo next month. Will you be my coach? Okay. He was going to do the 30-year mortgage, which is standard in the US,
Hmm.
and he paid it off in 8 months.
Wow.
And so he tells his business partner, I tell a friend of mine what happened. They become the next two people I help. And now all of a sudden, instead of listening to my head, which said, go to dental school, I'm listening to my heart. And it said, the way you're going to make an impact in this world, it's not dentistry anymore. It's teaching people, I now call it the new rules of finance and the system around it so that they can get to their freedom sooner. However, they define freedom, it can just be done more, it can be done faster, it can be done more effectively and more efficiently than anyone's ever told them. And so that's what I do now.
Right. Okay. And I mean, mortgage is definitely one of those big overheads that people have every single month going out of their account. And for many, financial freedom or that freedom, as you might call it, is paying off the mortgage, right? Once they paid off the mortgage, they feel free. So, so how did you learn to move money around?
Yeah. So the simple answer is, at least in the US, it's called a home equity line of credit or a HELOC. But for those that are in the UK or Australia that are listening to this, it's understanding how an offset mortgage works. And very simply is that you're using your house or your flat as your checking account. All of the income comes into one spot, so you're attacking all of the debt just in one laser focused type of idea.
Mhm.
And then when the expenses come out, you're taking out less than, the only way this works is that your income is greater than your expenses. But because
Yeah.
you have so much extra cash flow now, because you don't have this fixed debt payment, you can pay off that house far faster than you thought possible. But the
Mhm.
biggest key to this, Sanjay, is that you always have access to the money. It's one thing to have a paid off house. It's another thing to have a paid off house and you have your this emergency fund there as well, which could be hundreds of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of pounds because life happens.
Mhm.
And the last thing that we want is that life happens and now you have no access to money either, because that's when you really start freaking out. And so it's understanding the system. And that's what I teach people because in the US, it's not taught.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
explained anywhere because when you think about what you're doing or what I'm trying to teach people, it helps the client, it helps their business if they're a business owner, it helps their personal life. The only people that lose are the banks.
Right.
So the banks aren't going to teach you this because they're like, well, if we make less money, why would we teach this to someone else? You're
Mhm.
not.
Yeah. And I think also that there is generally a lack of financial education anyway when it comes to personal finance and managing your own money. So there's a gap there. And then, as you say, the providers of that finance, they're not necessarily going to teach you a way to reduce the burden that you have because it's in their interest for you to be continue paying interest in that. So for the benefit of our listeners who may not be familiar with this, I'm going to try and summarize how it works or how I understand it works. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here. But in effect, you've taken a loan on your home, and that's usually kept in a separate account, which we would call a mortgage or a home loan. And then you've got your current accounts where your money's coming in and your expenses are going out. And usually those are two completely separate things. And you're paying from your current account to your mortgage each month, however much it is to pay off the mortgage. Whereas in the model that we're talking about here, your current account and your mortgage account is actually just one account, and your money comes in to the same pot, and you draw from it as you need to pay your expenses. But because it's in this pot, you're reducing the amount of debt and getting to that zero much more quickly because of that. Is that a fair summary?
100%. Yes.
Okay.
And so a different way that I like to kind of bring up this analogy is number one, do you know what the word mortgage means? Like the root word of it?
No.
So it's two French words together that means death pledge.
Oh, okay. I
All
suppose
right.
yes. Mort. Yes. Okay.
You're right. Mortuary, mortician. So, I mean, like the system is set up for you to make payments until you die or you're going to die trying.
Okay.
And one other concept that I want you to understand is why is another word for money is currency.
Mhm.
Why is it called currency? Because money has to flow. Think of an electric current. Okay. When you hit on and it completes that circuit, those electrons move to power on our computer, our microphones, the ability for us to talk, even though we're, 5,000 kilometers away from each other. Um, and so the electrons are moving. The economic system works exactly the same. The money has to move. The question becomes, is it going to move for your benefit or for their benefit? And at least in the way that the US has set up the system, is that when you have this mortgage or your home loan, it's a one-way street. You put the money in, you can't get the money out. So you have to park it in these other silos, a checking account, a savings account. You park it, but what does the bank do? The bank takes that money and starts to move it for their own benefit. Instead, what we're doing is we're taking the whole system back, and now we're going to make the money move for our own benefit within our own economy. So I'm just taking the rules that the banks have set up and now playing the game for you instead of for them.
Hmm. Okay, understood. I mean, that's a very, very powerful way to look at it. How long have you been doing this coaching now?
I've been doing this. Oh my God, it's this. I'm going on year 5. I started. I officially planted my flag March of 2020, which was just awesome timing.
Yeah,
But
great timing.
and it's one of those. It's been a slow start because it's just a completely foreign concept to people in terms of you can do that. Yes, you can do it. And then once they see it, you can't unsee it. And they're like, oh my God, I wish I knew this 15 years ago. I would have been so much further ahead. It's like, no kidding. If only we were taught.
Mm. Yeah. There's another approach that I know some people say, certainly I take, which is you look at what return you can make on the money that you've got in your current account, your checking account or savings account, and you look at then the rate of interest that you're paying on your home loan. And if you can have your savings earning more than the rate of interest on your home loan, then actually that's also a form of moving the money around to your benefit, right? Rather than having the offset mortgage. Or am I wrong in that?
You're not wrong. And that is probably one of the biggest hurdles that people have is, because rates were so low for so long, and then especially in like 2020, 2021, that people could get mortgages here in the US for under 3%. And they're like, my mortgage is at 3%. Why would I give that up and then use a line of credit that could be at 7 or 8%? And so I kind of flip the script around and I say, let's pretend that we had a car loan just to make this easy. And your car loan is $500 a month and you have $15,000 left on the loan. And so, Sanjay, if I just came up to you and said, I've got an investment opportunity, it's going to cost you $15,000 to invest, but I guarantee you your cash flow is going to go up $500 a month. Guaranteed, 100% guaranteed. Are you in or are you out?
I'll probably say I'm out.
You're going to say you're out, really. Most people would say I'm in because if it's a $15,000 investment and I'm going to get $6,000 a year as additional cash flow, well, where else can I get that?
Hmm. I'm thinking of the car loan that I've still got to owe though. So I'm thinking, oh, I haven't got 15,000 because I've got to pay my car loan.
Right. And so what I'm really doing is, and so I never said anything about the interest rate on the car loan. I'm just looking at the payment on the car loan. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if we use what's called a cash on cash return in this example, if we're going to free up $6,000 a year on a $15,000 investment, that's a 40% cash on cash return. Guaranteed. Find me something better.
Yeah.
If you can, then invest there. But if you can't, invest in the debt to free up the cash flow. So I don't care about interest rates. I just care in terms of where am I going to free up the most money next? That's
Hmm.
how I look at it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it kind of sounds complicated, but at the same time, it sounds pretty simple, if that makes sense. Because this is a concept that people don't really come across, right? That often.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is that like I get away from the interest rates and say, look, we live our life by cash flow. What's the money that comes in? What's the money that goes out? What's the money we have left over? And so to increase your cash flow, there's only two ways to do it. We either earn more money, ideally passively, or we remove the fixed debt payments from our life. That's it. We're always going to have expenses. The only time that you don't have expenses is when you die, and then you don't care anymore anyway in terms of what your budget is. All right. So I really, what my goal is, there's two factors to it. My goal, if you're saying like what's success to me? My
Yes,
goal is
indeed.
number one, you have control over the debt. When you have that mortgage, when you have that fixed debt payment, you don't have control. That payment is exactly the same month after month.
Mm,
So, can we control and manipulate the debt? Because I'm not saying debt is bad. I'm just saying debt you have no control over
mm.
is
And
bad.
yeah, and people do it. They spiral downwards into almost depression sometimes, right? When the debt, they feel they have no control over that debt. It can have a very deep impact on people.
100%. I mean, I've got one client right now, a dentist for obvious reasons. Okay, highly successful practice. I mean, you hear the numbers, fabulous. Okay, profit margins look good. What's the problem? The problem is the debt. They have $3.6 million of business debt. They have nearly $1 million of personal debt. All of that debt combined, those fixed payments is $55,000 a month
Wow.
for the next 8 to 13 years.
Mm,
They feel stuck.
yeah.
All right. And so, yes, they do well and it's great right now, but they have no flexibility because if they wanted to sell their practice, you pay off the debt, you have taxes to pay, and they're like, well, what remains? Not enough for all of the blood, sweat, and tears they put in.
Yeah.
And so we're going to work together. We're going to be able to pay off all of this debt in under 3 years.
Okay.
So now all of that cash flow is available above and beyond everything else they're making. And now they've got flexibility again. Now they've reduced their stress because they're like, I don't have to work 4 days a week. Maybe I only work two, maybe I only work one. And have the other dentists have the capability of living their life and producing to whatever degree they want because I've just freed up $50,000 a month for myself.
Yeah. It's very
That's the
powerful, isn't
beauty
it?
of this.
Mm,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, that's for you yourself though, when you enter the profession of dentistry, what did you think success was going to be then?
Man, I thought it's one of those that like when I say this, I'm not trying to throw my parents under the bus because they never pushed me. They never pressured me, but it was just the outside societal pressure of doctor, dentist, lawyer.
Yes, a very
Right.
familiar story.
Yeah, that I was listening to the external world and never listening. I never bothered to stop and listen to my heart and say, is this really what's going to make you happy?
Yeah.
I tried to play the logic game and say, you know, yeah, this should make me happy because everyone else thinks this is what success is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oftentimes we set off on this journey, right, which is laid out for us potentially, right? Okay, you go to school, you go to university, you start a particular profession, doctor, dentist, lawyer, engineer. Those are kind of the top four that everyone kind of talks about, especially in an Asian society. Those are absolutely the top four. And it's almost like you're letting people down if you don't follow one of those, or there's a reason why they think those are good because they're steady, right? They're steady incomes, their professions are well respected, well regarded. But to your point, if it's not making you happy, then what is the point in doing it? Why even follow that particular path?
Yeah. 100%.
And I can see why looking into someone's mouth, 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, or however long is not exactly that great a thing to be doing either.
Unless you love it, unless you are absolutely
Yeah.
passionate about it. then
Yes.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've covered what success means to you. I have a tradition in my podcast of asking a previous guest to ask a question for my next guest. And so my last guest asked a question, which I shall read out. What's the version of success you're still afraid to admit you want?
Oh, man, that's a good question.
It's quite a deep question, isn't it?
It is a deep question, and I can tell you what the answer is because I'm seeing this with a friend of mine. I'm trying to help him. He's got an unbelievable idea. He's got the parts and pieces. In the last I'm going to say the last week, he has started to sabotage himself.
Okay.
And I have to, especially the last couple days or yesterday, actually, it was yesterday. I said to him, "Are you afraid of success?" Because when I asked this to you a month ago, when I think the parts and pieces were not really starting to get there, he's like, "I'm not afraid of success." No, I can absolutely see in terms of where this is going. And when I asked him again yesterday, he paused for a while. And I think deep down he was afraid of it. And then he followed up with, "I don't know if I'm afraid of success or I'm more afraid that I'm going to screw this up."
Right.
Because the opportunity is absolutely legitimate in terms of what he's building. The So to answer your question, when I really step back and think about it is if we're going to look at this from a financial perspective, the money that and this is really bizarre, but there's part of my psyche that says the money that I made as a dentist, I didn't deserve it
Okay.
because again, I was going with my head and not my heart.
Mhm.
The can can I make a greater impact? Am I helping enough people? Am I getting the message out there enough to that if there's the Zig or the Jim Rohn quote or Zig Ziglar, I can't remember which one. Help enough people get what they want, and you're going to get what you want. Am I afraid of helping that many people that they get what freedom is to them, and correspondingly, then I get what I want? I hope that's not the answer. I hope I don't have to go, see a shrink about this in terms of saying that, like, no, I really do deserve this. But I honestly feel at this stage in my life, now that I know how I really am making an impact for people, when they get that moment, as you explained it, Sanjay, in terms of how all this works, when that moment hits and they're like, oh, now I see what's happening. That's the moment I live for now. That
Right.
that really is success to me, where
Hmm.
it just switches over where they're like, "This makes so much sense."
Yeah.
And can I get in front of enough people to that I can continue to live that moment again and again and again? It's I don't know if there's ever gonna be a time I get tired of it, but I also don't know if there's ever gonna be a time I get burnt out from it, say, "No, I've that's enough."
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't think so. I hope not. I hope not. I think that there's enough people out there that that if they're exposed to the idea that I can get them to their freedom. And so I think success for me at this stage of my life is eternal.
Hmm.
I have some people ask me, do you want to retire? And I'm like, I kind of did once. Call it a sabbatical if you want to. And I realized I am too young to not be productive in this world. And so
Hmm.
at this stage, because I find this fun, I don't want to retire.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely
Like to
get that.
me, it's like if you're having fun, then why would you want to stop?
Mm. Yeah, exactly. It's true. I suppose, you do get to a point in life where you think, okay, it is, time, your thoughts turn to retirement, but then you've got that, I suppose, freedom that I don't need to retire and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Why should I? And at the end of the day, if you're mentally stimulated, you're intellectually stimulated, you're making an impact on people and people's lives, then why stop, right? Why, it's definitely worth continuing.
100%.
I was interested with your friend's story as well about self-sabotage because I was asked by a friend recently if I would participate in an event, and my first thought was, but this event seems like too big and too much to bite off and too much to chew. But actually, the reality is, I've run big events. I kind of know how to manage a room or an audience or whatever. And this is the kind of thing that they were asking me to do. But my knee-jerk reaction at the time was the fear of failure. That was the knee-jerk reaction that I had, rather than the success that would come from it. And I can kind of see your friends maybe is going through that process in himself, that I've got a great idea. Initially it's, yeah, I can make it a success. And now it's like, okay, will I really make it a success? So that pause in their thinking.
And where I want to challenge you on that, and thank you for bringing that up, is the idea of failure is only in your head.
Yeah, exactly.
Your friend would probably say, whatever part of this that you did, that was awesome.
Yeah,
And you would have no idea. It's like, but if we did these three things, it could have been so much better. And it's just gonna be like, the audience got so much value from what you shared. Like, they don't know any different.
exactly. This is exactly it, and you have to stop yourself and say this, that. It's a bit like when you stand up to do public speaking and you feel really nervous, but actually, your audience doesn't know your script. So even if you missed out a huge chunk of it, they're not going to know. As long as they walk away with, what you wanted, the message you wanted them to walk away with, then your work is done. So I fully get that. Howard, do you have a question for my next guest?
Yeah, it's probably not the most original, but what is, however old they are, pretend that they are talking to my two boys who are now 16 and 19. What's the advice you would give to your younger self, to the,
Okay.
to that, you as that individual who is getting into that formative early adult years? What's the piece of advice you would give them now?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's it doesn't have to be like an original question. That's very much top of mind for a lot of people at the minute. And there's a trend on TikTok, right? Having a coffee with my 16-year-old self, and what would I say to them? So, what would you say to your 16-year-old self now?
The the three pieces of advice is, number one, the work that you do is not your identity. It's might be the way that you provide value in the current moment, but it is not entirely who you are. Number two is take your shot.
Okay.
That try something. If it fails, who cares?
Hmm.
No one else is watching anyway. So you think they are? They don't care. They're too busy with their own lives to really care in terms of what's going on and what's not. And the last
Yeah.
thing that you'd want to do is get on your deathbed and say, and look at the person, you're on your deathbed, you're looking at this individual and they say, "Who are you?" And that person replies back to you, "I am the person that you could have been
Mm.
if you only took your shot." And the third thing, which is a deeper story, and it was when Jaden was first going into the first time that he was into the operating room. And I'm not going to go into the whole story, but is life is better with ice cream.
Okay. Life is better with ice cream. This is all very good and sage advice, and to be fair, it's applicable to anyone at any stage in their life, because we all have those moments, right, where we might back to the start of this discussion, where people have climbed a mountain in a professional sense, that is their identity, and they've struggled to kind of step back from that. And definitely, life is definitely better with ice cream. That's for sure. So, Howard, thank you very much for your time. I think we're at the top of our time now. It's been a very interesting and fascinating conversation. Um, I'm sure people will have lots of questions when they listen to this about this thing that you were talking about, making money move around like current. How best can they get in touch with you if they've got some questions or want to engage your services?
Yeah, the best way to do that is financially led. So financiallyled.com. Um, if you want, you can email me. I still use my old business name, so it's Howard Howard at cashflowcoachusa.com.
Okay, that's great. Well, and do you have a LinkedIn profile or Instagram or so?
LinkedIn, yeah, just look up Howard Polansky. Yep. SKY, not SKI at the end.
SKY. Okay, great. We'll make sure that those are added to the video at the bottom so people can follow and click through on that. So yes, thank you, Howard, for taking time to join me on Success Matters. It's been a very fascinating story, and it's great to hear that your son is recovered fully from his operations, and is no doubt going to be a very young, strapping man as he goes through life.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you for the opportunity.
To find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.